If you want to keep a woman attracted long term, you need to understand something counterintuitive. The exact behaviors that make you seem like a good boyfriend are the same behaviors killing her desire for you. I know this because I've worked with hundreds of men and I see the same pattern over and over. With smart guys and good guys, men who think they're doing everything right, from being available to being supportive and solving her problems. And they're confused when she says, I just don't feel the same about you anymore. Here's what's really happening. You think you're being a good partner, but she experiences you as needy, predictable, and emotionally dependent. And before you dismiss this as playing games or manipulation, understand that women already know these patterns. They use them naturally. Actually, by not using them, you're actually the one playing a rigged game. So, in this video, I'm going to break down the three levels of maintaining attraction, why each one works, when they fail, and the deeper principle that makes all of this unnecessary once you truly embody it. By the end, you won't just get the strategies, but you'll also understand the identity shift from men trying to keep her to men she's trying to keep herself. All right, so let me start by showing you what stupid thinking looks like in relationships, okay? Stupid thinking is trying to logic a woman into attraction. She says she's upset, so you explain rationally why she shouldn't be. She pulls away, so you pursue harder to prove you care. She loses interest, so you become more available to win her back. It's the same pattern every time. You treat her emotions like problems to be solved with logic. But here's what you're missing. Everything is emotional for her. No amount of logic will change how she feels. In fact, the more you try to rationalize her emotions away, the more she feels misunderstood. Stupid thinking is actually one dimensional because you can only see from your perspective. I'm being a good boyfriend, therefore she should appreciate me. But you can't see that she's experiencing something different. He's always available, always agreeable, and always there. There's no mystery, no tension, no space for me to actually miss him. So I'm bored. The mark of stupid thinking is that you stop thinking too early. You reach the limit of what seems logical, like being supportive is good, and then you defend that position without questioning whether it's actually creating the result you want. Smart men do this all the time. They apply logic that works in their career, in their fitness, in business, and jam it into relationships where it doesn't really fit. So let's define what genius thinking actually is in dating. The ability to hold uncomfortable truths, like being too available, kills attraction, even when they threaten your identity as a good guy. It's understanding the deeper patterns of desire rather than just knowing surface level dating advice. And most importantly, it's the ability to continue thinking even when your ego wants to defend what you're currently doing. Think about the first time you heard your favorite song. You probably got the chills and you couldn't get it out of your head for weeks. And you fast forward a few months, you hear it in the elevator and it's just background noise. You know every note by heart, but it doesn't really hit the same because the novelty is gone. The same thing actually happens when you're in a woman's proximity 24/7. You drain her imagination and you become predictable. So you leave no empty gaps for her to actually fantasize about you. Familiarity breeds contempt and eventually disrespect because the intense desire that gripped her initially starts deteriorating. I'll tell you what I did wrong in my first serious relationship to understand that I was so infatuated by this woman that I cancelled plans with friends. I adapted my schedule to accommodate hers. I gave up the gym routine, the work projects, the social circle, all the things that actually made me attractive in the first place. It felt right. I thought this is what love looks like. You make sacrifices. But here's what I didn't realize. I wasn't just sacrificing my time. I was sacrificing my identity. You see, I became a satellite orbiting her world instead of a planet with my own gravitation. And the worst part about it is that she wasn't even asking me to do this. I did it to myself, thinking that it would actually make her love me more, but actually has like the opposite effect. The lesson here is that you maintain your autonomy. You keep your passions, your interests, and friendships intact, in spite of being in love. These aren't distractions from the relationship, they are actually, truthfully, the foundation of what really makes you attractive as a man. And your time is your most valuable resource. So don't break yourself in half for someone who's still guarding their own time and is far less invested than you are. Now, obviously, maintaining autonomy is good, but there's even a deeper layer to it, which is what I call strategic absence. Because absence gives a woman the space to actually miss you. It reinforces her good feelings. It increases your perceived value and respect. By creating separation for short periods, you break the clingy impulse and make your return far more memorable because you want your presence to be valued, not seen as just a liability. And here's where most guys get this wrong. They learn about that phrase, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and then disappear for a week thinking she'll come running back. Instead, she moves on. Why? Because absence only amplifies what's already there. If she was already losing attraction because he had no life, no purpose, no value outside of her, absence doesn't create desire. It just confirms that you're gone and she doesn't really care. So, this is the difference between knowing and understanding. I should be less available. That's knowing. But understanding is absence works when I'm genuinely busy building something valuable, not when I'm pretending to be busy while I'm obsessing over her, because you're still going to project. So here's the shift you have to make in your thinking. I should always be there for her because that's what good boyfriends do. That's a level one conformist right there. There's a second level to it, which is more of an individualist, which is I should create absence to make her miss me. And then there's a level three, which is more of a synthesis, which is I should have a life so compelling that absence is natural rather than manufactured. So you don't create absence, you stop abandoning your purpose to chase her validation. Think of a rubber band sitting on a table. What utility does it serve? Not much, right? It's just limp. But once you pull it and apply tension, it can hold things together. Tension in a relationship works the same way. Emotions that most people label as negative, jealousy, anxiety, uncertainty, for example, are actually like seasonings in the right doses because they prevent your relationship from flatlining. This is what I call the aphrodisiac effect because it's the art of creating tension through your tone, your words, and your actions. Now, on the surface, this sounds maybe a bit manipulative, and it certainly can be if you have bad intentions. But here's the truth women use these mechanisms all the time by default. Women hate boredom but love drama. They want to feel something all the time because it appeals to their emotional nature. So if you're literally perfect, always agreeable, always predictable, she will manufacture drama herself by creating that problem. So the more effective strategy is to keep things interesting by disrupting predictable patterns, by teasing her endlessly, calling out her questionable behavior, and obviously projecting social proof so that she sees other women desire you. This is more of a psychological insight, of course, but deliberately upgrade yourself through ambition and achievement. The more she can observe your value from other people's reaction, the more powerful your presence becomes in her eyes. This plants a seed of competition or rivalry in her mind that makes her more invested. But here's when it backfires, right? When tension becomes constant conflict, when you're not actually creating balanced uncertainty, you're just being chaotic and unreliable. A guy who only creates problems isn't attractive. He's just exhausting. The difference lies in the subtleties, right? So healthy tension is, oh, he has options, he has standards, and he'll walk away if I disrespect him. But more of that toxic chaos is like, oh, he picks fights for no reason, he's unstable, and he's addicted to drama. This sounds more like a narcissist, right? The pattern across all three dimensions is this. Autonomy fails when you're never present. Absence fails when you have no value. Tension fails when there's no foundation of respect. These all require the same core ingredient, which is self reliance. Let's zoom out and see how this pattern appears basically everywhere. The employee who's always available gets passed over for promotion. The one who has options and boundaries actually gets respect. In in fitness training, 3 hours a day seems ambitious, but it tears down your muscle. And it's ultimately rest that creates growth. In sales, for example, the desperate salesman who keeps calling kills the deal. But the one who sows scarcity is creating value. 18-hour days seems productive, but exhaustion literally backfires. So balance is what creates performance, right? So the same principles across every domain. Neediness repels, but abundance continues to attract more and more. So when I was fat and depressed, I was needy basically in every domain of my life, not just with women. I sought validation in friendships. I was too nice and dishonest because I was insecure. I was lazy because I had no self respect, you see? I said yes to everything, covering shifts at work, canceling plans for people who wouldn't do the same for me, staying in my comfort zone because rejection felt unbearable. The pattern wasn't about dating, it was about having no sense of my own value whatsoever. When I got jacked and confident, everything shifted because I worked harder, I spoke calmly, I didn't seek approval, and I actually had standards. These are all symptoms of improving yourself. And suddenly, obviously, women were more interested and more enthusiastic. But so were better friends, better opportunities, better everything. Because the real shift wasn't about learning techniques or pickup or game or charisma. It was about becoming self sufficient and self reliant. A man who doesn't need external validation naturally creates the conditions for attraction. And here's what most guys miss: you learn these three strategies: autonomy, absence, and tension, and you think, okay, I'll apply these and keep her attracted. But that's still first level thinking. The real question is, why did you need to learn them in the first place? Because you gave up your life when you entered the relationship, because you got infatuated and stopped vetting her properly, because you ignored the red flags: her sexual past, her core values, the degrading way she acted, and rationalized them as accepting her flaws. But here's what I learned the hard way. When I was still figuring these things out, I agreed to long distance, even though my gut told me it was wrong. I was too attached to think straight. So I missed the biggest warning sign: misalignment of core values. I was too infatuated to even notice, too invested in making it work to ask if it should work. The relationship fell apart, obviously, and I learned that these strategies don't exist to manipulate women into staying. They actually reveal whether she's worth keeping in the first place. Strategic absence shows you if she respects your time. Tension shows you if she can handle a man with standards. And autonomy obviously shows you if she values you for who you are or just for what you provide. So, this is the shift, right? You think you're learning how to keep her attractive, but actually, you're learning to build a life so valuable that her leaving wouldn't destroy your whole foundation. The strategies only work when you genuinely don't need them. So, here's the ultimate truth I have for you, my friends. All three strategies work because a woman wants a man who is self reliant and doesn't need her to stand on his own 2 feet. Not a man who abandons her or creates chaos, but actually a man who chooses her from a position of strength rather than desperation. Before this video, you may have thought you were a good guy who got unlucky with women who just couldn't figure it out. But now you should realize that you were just out of touch with what women actually respond to and how desire actually works. So the next time you feel threatened by these ideas, this feels manipulative, or I don't want to play games, try and sit with that discomfort, see what happens. Realize your brain wants to feel safe by clinging to your identity as the good guy. But that identity is what's keeping you stuck. Women already use these patterns naturally. By refusing to learn them, you're not being authentic, you're just being ignorant. The men who win aren't learning manipulation, they're recovering their masculine presence. They're learning to actually command respect and desire without argument, posturing, or just overall neediness. And that's not about keeping her hooked. It's more about becoming the kind of man worth being hooked on. So that's it, my friends. If you've gathered anything useful, please let me know your thoughts below. And of course, if you have any questions, do let me know what those questions are. I'd be happy to help. And of course, as always, if you want to work with me one on one, click the first link in my bio. You'll find the direct link to my website, and you can book a strategy call with me directly. Anyways, thank you for your time, and I'll catch you soon. Take care.